So you alluded to it in the highlights. Ben Simmons was sensational early, and they are obviously a different team when they actually have another All-Star. All this series, Ben Simmons has just been an All-Star in name only. He actually played like one last night. And the very simplistic method for the Sixers is this: force misses on the defensive end, get out running on the offensive end, and then Ben Simmons can be Ben Simmons. It is so much of his ability to be that force multiplier is you've got to get stops, because then you can get out in transition or the semi-transition, and they look like a totally different team. And the other element was Joel Embiid and his presence in the defensive paint. Joel Embiid's, it's not just block shots and altered shots, it's scaring guys out of even attempting shots in the restricted area, forcing guys into tougher shots, shots they don't want to take. That was the difference. That was the only reason this game wasn't a blowout the entire way, was Boban came in for Embiid for a couple minutes twice in the first half. So Toronto immediately both times went on runs. Boban, I think, was minus 15 in 6 minutes in the first half, which is almost impossible. But when Embiid was out there with Simmons playing the way he was and Jimmy Butler continuing his playoff excellence, you saw the best version of Philadelphia.
Yeah, this was what we should have expected. If we go back to game number 5, the embarrassment of Philadelphia, all the bad press that they got, Joel Embiid, this is really the second time in their pro career that people have been down on them. Last year when they got knocked out in the second round of the playoffs, and what they were facing in Toronto, coming back with the game number 6, and the crowd, they gave them a lift early. Now the crowd, it was like, hey, we're going to cheer appropriately, not all the time, but if you play bad, we will boo you. Even with a 9-point lead, Nick, you and I were talking about how the crowd was booing, and it's hard for younger players. But I thought that their professional pride, led by Jimmy Butler, that would lead to a victory in game number 6. So it was nice to see them all play well. And it was Joel Embiid, especially early because of injury, as if Brett Brown said, you know, we're going to take a back seat on the offensive end. We're going to allow the offense to go through Jimmy Butler and Ben Simmons. And Ben Simmons, man, is like he's got a split personality when Joel Embiid is not the focal point of the offense, especially early in games. And I know Ben Simmons is far from a streak shooter, but he's the kind of guy that can only play at a certain type of pace for him to be effective. 6'10", point guard, get out in transition. You made a great point. When teams are scoring on you, you can't run the fast break. This is not Showtime, where the Lakers would fast break no matter if you made a bucket or if they were able to get defensive stops. So they got those defensive stops early. One point I want to make, something we need to watch for in game number 7 on Sunday, Kawhi Leonard. Now, Kawhi is still playing good basketball. He's back down to earth playing like a top 5 player in the world. But the three-point line, the last 2 games, 0 for 8 from three-point line. When you are a guy like him, and when you can't hit that three-point shot, I believe that will change in game number 7. But that has led to 2 wins, to this win by the 76ers, his inability to be able to hit the 3 in game number 6.
And it's led, even though that Toronto won game 5, Kawhi was over 50% from 3 in this series. It was one of the reasons he was unguardable through 4 games.
Yes.
Is he can get to the basket, and you had to guard him at the three-point line like he was Steph Curry. And when you have the strength and athleticism of Kawhi and the ability, he didn't have the quickest first step, but he's so strong that if he gets even a little bit by you, he can turn his shoulders and you can't get back around him. And so they are still obviously going to be worried about him as far as defending the three-point shot. But going from over 50%, which is almost impossible, to back-to-back offers is something to watch for going into Game 7.
What bothered me is Nick Nurse took to the podium after the game and said, we just didn't play hard enough, which is inexcusable when you're at this point in the playoffs. But it's the same thing we heard from Brett Brown about the Sixers. My question is, why has this series been such a tug-of-war? We keep going back and forth on who's more talented and who should win, and yet there have been blowouts on both sides, on home, on the road. Are they evenly matched? Is that what it is?
Well, to try to clarify what the coach was saying, because it's hard to look good and it's hard to play with a lot of energy when your shots aren't going in. I mean, they couldn't buy a three-pointer in the first half, and that led to the Sixers having that lead that they had in the first half of the game. So I can understand what the coach is saying, because there's a different type of energy that you have to come to the arena with to close someone out on their home court. And that energy they didn't have. I thought it wasn't like they were just carefree. But there's there's a fine little line right there when you go somewhere, and this is still a very, very young team outside of Kawhi and Gasol as far as deep playoff experience. So that right there, I think the coach was trying to identify with. They didn't have that mentality where we're getting ready to go in someone else's building and to be able to close them out.
And this is why, not to pile on Boston the day after, but this is why the Celtics series is such a disaster for them and so disappointing. This is how second round and third round and ideally NBA Finals series should be. Right. We have two excellent teams. We are down to the best 8 teams in basketball, the best 4 in each conference. We talked all year long about how the Eastern Conference was different this year. There were 4 really good championship caliber teams if they played their best. Philly has been, to me, still has the most talented starting 5 in the conference. What's happened here is they haven't played like it because Ben Simmons has been hot and cold. Joel Embiid's been sick or not sick. But their lack of depth hasn't killed them in this series because Toronto's down to a 6-man team. Right now, they're down to their starters and Ibaka. Once again, that deep Toronto team is not a deep Toronto team. But you're looking at these series. Every series has been tightly contested. We have 2 going to 7 games. We have a third that we think's going to 7 games. And then there's Milwaukee, Boston.
And we can't forget that the 76ers, like, I'm not going to give them a pass. Joel Embiid's injuries, Joel Embiid being sick, Ben Simmons being inconsistent, not stepping up when the spotlight was the brightest. But this team has only played, their core group of guys, they played 20-something games together, Nick.
Right. Went into the playoffs having played 10 games, the starting lineup.
I mean, like, this starting lineup, so as these series go on, that's how you can see some lopsided victories in that. Because what Philadelphia is going through, they're going through for the first time. And most of their guys, this is their first time. Last year, they in the second round of the playoff, it was different. They didn't have Tobias. They didn't have Jimmy Butler. So I could understand why the back and forth. Right now, Toronto, out of the defensive teams we have in the playoffs, they're the best defensive team, too. So they have the ability to be able to shut you down. So that's why this series has been back and forth like it is.
What kind of impact does Joel Embiid have on this team when he is healthy and he's playing at full force?
So I think this is really interesting because in this series, Joel Embiid offensively has only had one, even what I would call a good game. There was the game he had 33 points, was outstanding. Every other game, he's been held to 17 points or fewer. But what he is doing defensively, and the best way to show it to you is the plus-minus. Look at the on-court, off-court for the Sixers in this series. In the regular season, when he's on the court, they're +8. When he's off the court, they're -3.5, and it's difference of 11. In the first round, when we said Brooklyn's got no one to deal with him, they got skinny Jared Allen, they got no one to deal with him. On-court, +24, off-court, just about even. Difference of 24.5. This series, when he's on the court, they are +21 net rating. When he's off the court, they are -46.
Wow.
They are getting annihilated when he goes to the bench. A difference of 67 points.
So even if he's injured, even if he's sick, we need him in the lineup
100%.
Because that's the type of impact that he can have, even if he's not an elite scorer of the basketball. There's so many other ways for him to impact the game.
Exactly.
Who wins the game?
On Sunday, I got to go with the home team. For a road team to win a Game 7, you need something. You need something really either miraculous or you need to be the way more talented team. I got to go with the Toronto Raptors on Sunday.
You ready to make a pick?
I believe Kawhi gets hot from three-point line. And the Raptors move on to the conference.
Kawhi Leonard 0 for 8 from 3 from the last 2 games combined. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.